Ronnie Barrett, thank you so much, sir, for joining us tonight. It's a real pleasure to get a chance to talk with you.
Well, great, Cam. It's good to be here.
Wish it was a better topic, actually. But once again, the president of Mexico, Felipe Calderon, blaming U.S. gun laws and U.S. firearms manufacturers for the violence in Mexico. He gave a speech in San Jose over the weekend, Mr. Barrett, and he said at the time that, let me give you the quote here. The deaths of thousands of people that are occurring in Mexico basically the gun makers in the United States are responsible for that. Quote, it is for profit, for the profits that it makes for the weapons industry. What's your response?
That is absurd. And don't ever be fooled. There is always a motive behind any kind of absurdities like this. Mm-hmm. And I, of course, tie this directly into Senator Schumer's bill that he introduced on March 2nd, which is you got to watch all these things. You say, so Schumer now has a bill that he's come in that's virtually going to require the InstaCheck or background checks on all transfers. And what kind of fire do they need to be able to get this basic regulation for all of us? Well, we need this big reason because, well, by golly, we just can't do it any other way. We can't save Mexico unless we have checks on everything that changes hands. A father won't be able to give a gun to his son, and this is all just smoke and mirrors. That's what every kind of gun regulation stuff is smoke and mirrors that we have to do something now to be able to save and then just fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Well, right now we have the Mexico thing, and the Wall Street Journal, a conservative paper, I was real disappointed on them. May 22nd,
yep.
Ran an article, An American Gun in Mexico, and it carries a record of how this Barrett rifle left here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and it went to, by golly, an FBI agent. Well, then it was sold to a deputy sheriff. Then the deputy sheriff sold it to this other guy, and you go, well, where's the problem here? And the people that are after your rights are going to say, the problem here is we need a check every time that gun changes hands. And so all of a sudden, these mysterious little stories all start to crop up.
Yeah.
Which is just fuel to the fire to the would-be socialists that would have more regulations on us.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right about that. When you see this concerted effort, and I think it is a very concerted effort. You talk about Senator Schumer. Senator Schumer and Senator Feinstein and Senator Whitehouse just released a report yesterday. And the myth of the 90% of the guns recovered in Mexico traced back to the United States that we heard back in 2009. That's now the myth of the 70%. 70% of the guns, they say, now recovered in Mexico traced back to the U.S. And again, that's a bogus figure using bogus statistics that do not tell the true story. But, I wonder, too, Mr. Barrett, down in Mexico, Felipe Calderon is in some political trouble as well. In fact, his fight against the cartels is becoming increasingly unpopular, and I kind of get the feeling he's casting around for a scapegoat. The cartels, he apparently can't blame the cartels for inflicting their violence, so he's got to look somewhere else, and he'll look north of the border. I guess you're not going to offend too many voters in Mexico if you complain and blame U.S. gun companies for the violence there in your own country.
Well, inanimate objects can't be blamed for violence. If we're going to blame things like this, Tennessee has some wonderful bourbon and Tennessee whiskey makers, and we're not going to be able to come back and blame Jack Daniels for every drunk that has an accident on the road. I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course, in our new day where somebody else is always responsible for our actions, that seems to be a popular thing. So that's a ridiculous thing in the first place. And Americans need to stand up and say enough is enough. This is all this foolish talk, and you're going to blame an American gun manufacturer. Let me tell you, there's not enough. The illegal weapons in Mexico. What occasional ones do go through is that's not where the guns are coming from. We've had studies and everything that proves where the guns are coming from. American gun manufacturers are not making full automatic AK-47s and things like that. This is BS. This is smoke and mirrors to get other legislation passed. believe me, America, we're fixing to see another fast one. And in Schumer's bill, and the write-up that the Wall Street Journal has done, it's all a setup for it. It's old as history. Whenever there's a political movement, a big one like this, there's usually a couple of little fast ones that's pulled. I don't care if it's the I hate to go back in our history, the Bay of Tonkin, or if it's the radio tower on the other side of Poland that was the smoke and mirrors to start World War II. They're always stuck in there that tells the people this is why we moved, this is why we took action on it, and this business about illegal, the real problem of Mexico. Believe me, is not the good law-abiding citizen and the good law-abiding gun dealers here in America. It's more deception.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's why it's so important that we push to get the truth out, because, as you say, the folks who want to use this, never let a crisis go to waste, right? That's what Rahm Emanuel said, and sadly, there are real people being hurt by the cartels, but we got politicians who want to blame U.S. gun laws, U.S. gun makers, U.S. gun owners for the violence of the drug cartel members in Mexico. And you're right, that's why it's so important we push back with the truth, so that as they press on to enact their gun control agenda, we can say, look, here are the facts. Here's the real story, America.
Yes. Well, you just can't. This is a convenient thing for them. Is to start to highlight stuff like this, because it all goes back to another big picture of what's it all about, and you just can't have good socialism with an armed population, and I keep preaching on that people can't figure it out. We have more guns, less crime. I mean, it's true. We have statistical data that says you just can't beat letting your good law-abiding neighbor have his own liberties and freedoms. He's not the problem. Criminals are the problem. But, when it comes down to what's the problem in Mexico, it has nothing to do with your Second Amendment rights. They're really not connected. But you're fixing to see some politicians that's going to make a connection.
That's right. Well, you talk about Second Amendment rights. Down in Mexico, of course, they've got really strict gun laws. And I saw not too long ago the head of police in the Mexican state of Guerrero, whose brother was killed by cartel members earlier this year, said he actually is going to petition Mexico's Congress to make it easier for law-abiding citizens in Mexico to own firearms for their protection. And he was really blunt. He said, look, there are more good people in this country than there are bad people, but the problem is the good people can't defend themselves, and so the bad people are running rampant.
That's correct.
There's a guy who gets it.
Yes, he does. And whoever came up with this ridiculous experiment about disarming law-abiding citizens is, there's the guy that we need to throw in jail. The experiment didn't work. It didn't work. It just needs to go away as fast as it can. But again, watch the administration, because I think this administration right now is not powerful enough to come on out with a frontal attack. But they will do a reactionary attack. And again, all of history, you'll see this sort of thing set up in it. They moved and took away our legal manufacturer for machine guns, because there was a popular television show called Miami Vice that was on, that everybody was running around shooting everybody up with machine guns, and there hadn't been a law committed with a legal machine gun, since 1934 or something like that. It was ridiculous. It was Hollywood.
Yeah.
But, they said, we've got to do something about that. And so they took another one of our rights away. And so now, the right to bear arms is going to be, well, you can have a inferior type of weapons. You can't have really top-notch weapons. So they inched away another law against us. And I know a lot of people may not be into machine guns, but it is the slippery slope thing that another right lost that you'll never get back.
Absolutely.
And we can't let that happen now under the smoke screen of we're going to have to register every gun, or we're going to have to insta-check every transaction so that we can solve the corruption problem in Mexico.
Yeah.
Don't believe it.
No. Look, I mean, Washington, D.C. had a law on the books for nearly 3 decades that said not only could you not own a firearm? But if you did register that gun with the police, of course, obviously you'd have to go through the police to transfer a firearm. And I seem to recall, Ronnie, that Washington, D.C. was the murder capital of the United States for like 14 of those years, and the violent crime rate always above the national average. You pass these laws, the law-abiding will obey them, and the criminals will not. We've got to go after the criminals if you want to make these streets safer.
If our government wanted to do anything to help Mexico, it would be to end our drug problem here. And that can be done. It's if you're gonna get rid of ants, you got to get the sugar up, sweep up the sugar. If we don't need to have the revolving door on criminals here in America, where it takes longer to fill out the paperwork than it takes for the guy to bond himself out.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to. Mexico has a problem. They have corruption, and the corruption's being the drug problem just throws fuel on the fire of the corruption, and then it just goes around in a circle. But indeed, we need to sweep up the sugar here in the United States, and so it's not a gun problem, it's a drug problem, and it's a corruption problem, and it has nothing to do with my good law-abiding neighbor owning his firearm.
You keep preaching on, sir.
Well, let's all stick together and know the truth and be educated on it, and tell our elected officials, tell your congressmen, tell your senators. It'll come down to telling your city council members. Don't let up on them. Keep the pressure on. We've got to remain free.
All right, Ronnie Barrett, thank you again, sir, for coming on the program. Look forward to talking again very soon.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you, sir. Ronnie Barrett from Barrett Firearms Manufacturing joining us here on Cam and Company.